Dear Chosen One, the worst mistake your enemies ever made was thinking your silence meant surrender. But you and I both know, diamonds don't scream, they shine. They thought leaving you was a power move, that replacing you with something shallow would never catch up with them, that walking away from something sacred came with no consequence. But now regret doesn't visit them, it lives with them. They gambled everything and lost the one thing that mattered, you. What did they trade you for? A hollow performance, a loud distraction, a mask with no soul behind it. And while the world may see their staged smiles, their curated posts, and their public performance of happiness, you see the truth. Behind closed doors, the cracks are showing, the laughs don't reach their eyes. The silence at night, deafening, because what they tried to replace was never just a relationship, it was divine favor. And now that you're gone, so is the peace, so is the clarity, so is the blessing. Before we dive deeper into this truth, take a moment and comment 999 below. Not for me, but for the mission. Each click pushes this message further, sending it to another chosen one who needs to remember who they are and reclaim what was stolen from them. Every tap of that number is a signal that this message is for us, the ones they tried to silence but couldn't stop. And to those of you who have supported this channel through super thanks, thank you from the depths of my soul. Your generosity helps carry this message across borders and into hearts. And if you're here simply watching, reflecting, and healing, know this: you are deeply appreciated too. Whether you give or not, your presence here is a gift, and I see you. Now, let's talk. Welcome, chosen ones. You weren't made like the rest. Your spirit carries weight, your silence carries authority, and your presence, it shakes the very rooms you enter. That's why they feared you. That's why they tried to use you, tame you, twist you, because they could feel your power before you even spoke. But what they didn't know is, when you're chosen, you don't walk alone. When they tried to dim your light, they weren't just opposing a person, they were resisting divine order. And the universe? It doesn't forget betrayal. It keeps receipts. Your silence? It wasn't weakness, it was strategy. And while they celebrated too early, thought they won because you didn't react, the storm within you was quietly loading. And now, they're stuck performing while you're becoming. They tried to replace you with noise, but your absence echoes louder than their distractions. Because you weren't just a moment, you were the mirror, the blessing, the shift, and now they're haunted by the memory of choosing dust over diamonds. So, to the chosen one who's been questioning their worth, stop it right now. You didn't lose them, they lost you. And not just the you that loved them, you, the one that was sent, the one that carried clarity, the one that held light they weren't ready for. This isn't revenge, this is revelation. This is the universe showing them what they walked away from. And now, every moment they fake a smile, your name whispers in the background like the truth they'll never shake. So if you're still here, know this: it wasn't random, it was divine. This message, it's your confirmation. Let's get into it, because what's coming next is going to hit different. God's chosen ones, they regret betraying you. You were a blessing, they chose something nasty. Number 1, they took water for weakness. Now they're drowning without it, and you were the water. Chosen one, have you ever been mistaken for weak just because you chose peace over chaos? Because you chose stillness over shouting, patience over pride? They saw your calm, your kindness, your unwavering silence. And they thought it meant you had nothing to say, nothing to fight for. But what if the most powerful ones are those who don't need to prove anything? What if your silence wasn't surrender, but divine restraint? You weren't quiet because you were afraid. You were quiet because the spirit inside you knew. Storms don't announce themselves with noise. They come with power. While they were mistaking your grace for fragility, they never realized you were the one holding everything together. They thought they could mistreat you and still win. But how can anyone win after losing a divine blessing? How do you climb after cutting off the hand that helped you up? The Lord will fight for you. You need only to be still. Exodus 14:14. You see, when you're chosen, your silence becomes your strategy. Your stillness is not absence, it's alignment. They confused your endurance for emptiness, but you weren't empty. You were full of something they could never carry. Favor, destiny, calling. You were water in their desert, and instead of cherishing it, they spit in the well. And now they are drowning in a life without you. Not because you're vindictive, but because they broke a covenant they never even recognized. They traded a wellspring of purpose for a puddle of convenience. Look at how their lives spiral. All the noise, all the pretending, but no peace. Do you think Oprah Winfrey's relatives didn't regret dismissing her dreams when she rose to become one of the most influential voices of our time? At one point, even her own family thought she was wasting her life chasing a dream. But they didn't see the divine seed within her. Just like the people who left you, they only saw the surface. And when the fruit grew, they were no longer welcome in the garden. Do not be deceived. God is not mocked. For whatever one sows, that will he also reap. Galatians 6:7. So, why do you still carry the guilt for the choices they made? Why are you questioning your light just because it burned their shadows? They didn't leave because you were too much. They left because your presence exposed what they weren't willing to change. They laughed when you were quiet. They scoffed when you were loyal. They betrayed you while you were busy holding them together. But you weren't just a kind person. You were a divine gift dressed in humility. You were the shelter they prayed for but abandoned the moment the storm passed. And now, the shelter is gone, and they're standing bare in the rain. You are the light of the world. A city on a hill cannot be hidden. Matthew 5:14. Take Kobe Bryant, for example. There were teammates and critics who underestimated his obsession with greatness, calling it arrogance or isolation. But when the championships came, when the legacy was cemented, suddenly everyone wanted to say they had believed in him all along. But many of them didn't. And by the time they realized the depth of what he carried, it was too late to stand beside him. Sound familiar? Chosen one, the same is true of you. When they walked away, they thought they were choosing freedom, but what they really chose was bondage to regret. You were the one assigned to bless them. But blessings don't chase betrayal. Blessings return to their source. You gave more than you should have, stayed longer than you needed to, loved past the breaking point, and now you're healing. Not just for yourself, but for the next season that demands your strength. The stone the builders rejected has become the cornerstone. Psalm 118, verse 22. Frida Kahlo was abandoned by the very people who feared her intensity, her uniqueness, her pain. Yet decades later, the world displays her art in museums. Her story lives on while those who called her too much faded into irrelevance. You, too, will be remembered by the impact you leave, not the lies they told. So when that voice creeps in, the one that tells you maybe you were the problem, maybe you should have dimmed your light to keep them, rebuke it. You weren't sent to shrink. You were sent to shine. Your purpose was never to be tolerated. It was to be revered. You were sent to shift atmospheres, not to blend in, and they knew it. That's why they tried to dilute you, because deep down, they feared your truth more than they ever respected your presence. Consider Tina Turner, abused, discarded, and left with nothing but her name. But with that name, she rebuilt her life, her career, and her worth. By the time those who betrayed her realized what they'd lost, she was already too far gone. just like you. You didn't walk away empty. You walked away redeemed. If they couldn't handle your light when you were wounded, what makes you think they'll ever qualify to witness your rise? Their smiles are hollow now. Their wins feel forced. They post pictures, but their spirit is starving. Because you weren't just a presence, you were a portal. You were the access point to favor, and now that it's gone, they're trying to manifest what was never meant for them. For many are called, but few are chosen. Matthew 22:14. Now walk forward, chosen one, not with bitterness but with clarity. You didn't lose them, they lost you. And in doing so, they lost the rarest thing the universe ever gives, access to someone marked by God. Number 2, they tried to blow out your flame. Now they're lost in the dark without you. Chosen one, have you ever noticed how some people seem allergic to your light? Not because it harms them, but because it exposes their shadows. Isn't it strange how your very presence, without trying, unsettles those who've never made peace with who they are? They weren't uncomfortable because you hurt them. They were uncomfortable because you reminded them of who they'll never become. They didn't want your friendship. They wanted your fall. They weren't inspired by your victories. They were threatened. And when they saw your flame shining quietly, consistently, and unbothered, they did everything in their power to dim it. But how do you dim a fire that was forged in the furnace of divine purpose? How do you kill something that was never lit by human hands? The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it. John 1:5. What they never understood was that your light wasn't fragile. It was sacred. It was built in silence, in suffering, in seasons where nobody clapped but heaven. You didn't earn it by pleasing people. You were born with it. It's not a spotlight. It's a soul glow. And they tried to smother it with shade, with mockery, with whispers that sounded like care but dripped with venom. Why do people feel so entitled to attack what they don't understand? Take Maya Angelou. When she rose from trauma, silence, and oppression to become one of the world's most revered voices, do you think everyone applauded? Number. There were those who sneered, who doubted, who tried to keep her in the dark. But her flame didn't flicker. It grew, and so will yours. They fed your insecurities while smiling. They offered backhanded compliments like, "You're doing too much," or "Don't let it go to your head." They didn't clap for you. They tolerated you, hoping you'd shrink just enough to make them feel taller. But chosen one, why would someone divinely assigned to illuminate ever need to apologize for shining? Arise, shine, for your light has come, and the glory of the Lord rises upon you. Isaiah 61. Every room you entered, the atmosphere shifted, not because you demanded attention, but because your spirit carried something ancient, something unstoppable. And insecure people can't coexist with power they can't possess. So instead of growing beside you, they decided to compete. But how can you compete with someone walking in divine timing? It's like what happened to Nikola Tesla, a man decades ahead of his time, ridiculed and robbed by those who couldn't grasp his genius. They tried to erase him, but history eventually crowned him. That's what happens when you're chosen. Your light may be hidden for a while, but it will never go out. You were the one holding the spark, and when they betrayed you, when they pushed you out, when they tried to replace you, everything collapsed, because you weren't just part of the story, you were the pulse. You weren't stealing their light, you were supplying it. And once you walked out, the room didn't just dim, it died. No weapon formed against you shall prosper, and every tongue which rises against you in judgment you shall condemn. Isaiah 54:17. So tell me, chosen one, how long will you keep questioning your worth just because others couldn't carry your weight? How many more times will you replay the moments when they smiled in your face but celebrated your silence? When will you stop letting the noise of jealousy define the volume of your purpose? They tried to wear your crown, but it scorched their heads, because what was tailored for your soul can't fit someone who only sees the glory and not the process. They didn't want your journey, just your rewards. But here's the truth. Favor comes with fire, and they weren't built to survive it. Look at Chadwick Boseman, quiet, humble, chosen. While others partied, he fought battles no one knew. He carried greatness silently, and those who once dismissed him suddenly wept when they realized what they lost. Your presence is just like that. You don't have to announce it. They'll feel the absence, louder than your words ever were. For God, who said, "Let light shine out of darkness," made his light shine in our hearts. 2 Corinthians 4:6. And now, those same people are performing peace. They post pictures with smiles stretched too wide. But you can see it, can't you? The hollowness in their eyes, the dullness of what used to shine, because they aren't celebrating, they're coping. They didn't just lose someone special, they lost the flame, the warmth, the very force that made their world make sense. Do you see what's happening? Everything they thought would rise without you is crumbling. They chased spotlights but forgot who powered the stage. They sought your place but underestimated your path. And now they live in a loop, pretending, performing, and paying for a betrayal they can't undo. But you're not lost. You've been found by the same force that lit your fire in the first place. And no matter how many times they try to copy your glow, they'll never replicate what was divine from the start. Like Joan of Arc, misunderstood, ridiculed, and ultimately martyred, she wasn't honored in her time by those closest to her, but history proved the fire she carried was of heaven. That's you. You're not here to be understood by the shallow. You're here to light up the deep. So stop dimming, stop folding, stop explaining yourself to people who couldn't hold a candle to your presence. You were never meant to compete in their darkness. You were born to outshine it. Let them chase applause. Let them cling to likes, clout, and imitation. Let them burn out trying to replicate what only the divine can create, because you are the original, the fire, the source. And when the universe lights someone like you, it never lights a copy. Number 3. They took the shortcut, and now they're lost with nowhere left to run. Chosen one, have you ever noticed how people who rush ahead without depth often end up spinning in circles? They didn't walk away because you were wrong. They ran because you were right, and right takes time. While you were sowing seeds in silence, they sprinted towards spectacle. While you were building patiently, they were chasing illusions. And now, what they grabbed in haste is slipping right through their hands. Why do some people think success is about speed instead of substance? Isn't it revealing how they confuse noise with worth, assuming that the loudest, brightest path was the most rewarding? But what they fail to see is that the universe doesn't bless the impatient. It blesses those who align with divine timing. Better is the end of a thing than its beginning, and the patient in spirit is better than the proud in spirit. Ecclesiastes 7:8. They saw your stillness and thought it meant you were stuck. They mocked your focus, called your discipline boring, and whispered that you lacked ambition. But you weren't lagging. You were training. You were conditioning your soul for something they couldn't see. They took the shortcut, and now they're stranded in a life full of quick highs and quiet collapses. Take Steve Jobs as an example. After being pushed out of Apple, he didn't retaliate or rush back. He rebuilt, re-strategized, and eventually returned with innovation that would define generations. The people who doubted him in his wilderness season didn't realize he was preparing to lead from a place they couldn't access. The same is true of you. They laughed at your process. Now they envy your results. You weren't looking for the limelight. You were laying the groundwork. While they were posting wins, you were practicing wisdom. While they entertained crowds, you were enduring character tests, because you knew real elevation isn't loud. it's layered. And what God is building in you cannot be replicated by people who confuse shortcuts with strategy. The plans of the diligent lead surely to abundance, but everyone who is hasty comes only to poverty. Proverbs 21:5. They wanted to be seen, you wanted to be solid. They pursued the crowd, you pursued the calling. And now, as the noise fades, guess who's still standing? You. Guess who's finally blooming in the quiet? You. Think about J.K. Rowling, once a struggling single mother on welfare who stayed the course with a manuscript nobody wanted. She didn't rush, she refined. And the very thing they rejected became a global phenomenon. Her breakthrough didn't come quickly, but it came with permanence. That's how divine timing works. It makes you wait so it can make you unshakable. Do you realize now why your path had to be harder? Why your climb felt longer? Because what you're carrying isn't for a moment, it's for a movement. And movements can't be microwaved. But as for you, be strong and do not give up, for your work will be rewarded. 2 Chronicles 15:7. They left you for something easier, something faster, something that glittered just enough to fool a surface-level heart. But you weren't built for easy. You were designed for eternal. You weren't just becoming someone successful. You were becoming someone essential. Isn't it strange how people can walk away from gold because it's quiet, only to run toward glitter that was never meant to last? Now they're left choking on the dust of their own decisions, staring at empty victories while your harvest grows in silence. Look at Nelson Mandela, imprisoned for 27 years, yet he emerged with more dignity than those who locked him away. Why? Because purpose outlives pressure, and the ones who are truly chosen don't collapse under delay. They strengthen through it, just like you have. So do not throw away your confidence, it will be richly rewarded. Hebrews 10:35. Now those who bet on shortcuts are watching your steps in silence. They scroll through your life like they missed a train they were once invited to ride. But you're not looking back. You're not slowing down to explain your route. You know what it cost to get here. And they paid nothing but expected everything. They confused momentum with mastery. But time is the great revealer. And while their fake victories evaporate, your steady obedience is turning into overflow. You are the answer to their what-ifs. You are the evidence that substance outlasts speed. You didn't just outlast them. You outgrew the very system that tried to make you invisible. And now they're stuck in a dead end of their own making. They skipped the process and hoped for the promise. But God doesn't bless shortcuts. He blesses submission. He blesses endurance. He blesses those who stayed when it wasn't pretty and kept building when no one clapped. Do you see it now? They didn't betray you because you were weak. They betrayed you because you refused to be rushed. And that patience, that obedience, it's become your platform. So don't go back explaining. Don't apologize for how long it took. Don't shrink just because they're finally squinting at your shine. Let your growth speak. Let your glow teach. And let their regret sit in the silence they once filled with judgment. Because you didn't just choose the longer path, you became the path. Number 4, they didn't just betray you, they broke their own blessing. Chosen one, how often do people confuse betrayal as a personal choice, not realizing it's a spiritual misstep? When they walked away from you, they weren't just turning their back on a person. They were stepping out of alignment with something far greater. They didn't abandon just you. They abandoned the protection that surrounded them because of you. And now they're walking through life exposed, and they feel it in ways words can't describe. Have you ever felt that still voice telling you someone was meant to be part of your journey? Not because they were perfect, but because they were positioned. That's what you were for them, a divine placement, an assigned connection, a lifeline disguised as loyalty. But when ego gets loud, discernment gets silenced. And that's exactly what happened. They weren't betrayed by you, they betrayed themselves when they lost you. Whoever walks with the wise becomes wise, but the companion of fools will suffer harm. Proverbs 13:20. Your presence brought clarity. Your peace calmed storms they didn't even realize they had. Your wisdom, your energy, your protection, all of it made them better. But they confused consistency with convenience. They mistook your elevation as competition. Instead of learning from you, they resented you. And in doing so, they violated the very favor that kept their life flowing. Look at the story of Aaron Burr and Alexander Hamilton. Burr, once a friend, became jealous of Hamilton's rise. In a moment driven by pride, he challenged him to a duel and took his life. But in killing Hamilton, Burr killed his own legacy. He was left disgraced, his name diminished, haunted by the consequences of turning on someone who had the power to elevate the very world he envied. That's the weight of betrayal. It boomerangs. The Lord is far from the wicked, but he hears the prayer of the righteous. Proverbs 15:29. So now, the ones who turned on you find themselves in unfamiliar territory. Things that used to flow, blocked. Opportunities that once seemed easy, now complicated. Peace that used to cover them, gone. And deep down, they don't fully understand why. But their spirit remembers. It remembers the moment they cut the cord to their blessing. Isn't it tragic how people only realize the value of a gift once it's gone? They thought you were just kind, not realizing your kindness was the covering. They thought they could replace you, not knowing you were the key to their next level. You didn't come into their life randomly. You were assigned, like Moses to the Israelites, to guide and protect. And just like those who rebelled in the wilderness, they had favor in their grasp and forfeited it. Touch not my anointed ones, and do my prophets no harm. 1 Chronicles 16:22. Chosen one, when they betrayed you, heaven took note, not in wrath, but in correction. You weren't punished, you were preserved. You weren't left behind, you were lifted higher. And while they were busy chasing counterfeit blessings, you became the real thing. Your favor expanded, your alignment grew. What used to be delayed is now flowing because you stayed clean while they got careless. Remember Princess Diana. The world adored her, but those within her inner circle, even her own royal family, betrayed her light. Yet after her death, the truth became louder than the lies. Her legacy soared while theirs fractured. What was lost in betrayal became immortalized in purpose. That is your story too. You may have been cut off, but you rose. You may have been broken, but never buried. Many are the afflictions of the righteous, but the Lord delivers him out of them all. Psalm 34:19. And now, those who betrayed you feel it in the quiet, not through obvious destruction, but through subtle unraveling, failed relationships, missed promotions, opportunities that fall through, night after night, wondering why things no longer align. The answer is simple. You were their alignment. Can you feel the power in that truth? You weren't just someone who passed through their life. You were their elevation partner, and now they're climbing alone with slippery hands and no harness. They stare at your life from a distance, and every success you experience echoes in their spirit as a reminder of what they forfeited. Consider Mike Tyson's former inner circle. Those who misused their access were later filled with regret when they realized they didn't just lose a paycheck, they lost proximity to greatness. They thought they were just cutting ties with a person. In reality, they lost the divine benefits that come from walking closely with someone chosen. And you, chosen one, might still feel tempted to wonder, was I the problem? Did I do too much? Should I have stayed quiet longer, given more, held on? But the truth is this, you weren't too much. You were precisely right. You were a rare energy in hands that were never clean enough to hold it. Be not deceived, God is not mocked, for whatsoever a man soweth, that shall he also reap. Galatians 6:7. They planted betrayal and are now harvesting regret. And this time, there's no going back, no redo, no reset. Because when someone walks away from divine alignment, the price is always spiritual, not just emotional. And no amount of pretending can bring back what was sent, then rejected. So what should you do? You rise. You stop mourning what walked away and start celebrating what you're becoming. You stop replaying the betrayal and start realizing the protection. You weren't cast out. You were carried out into a place where their chaos could no longer reach you. Let them sit in the silence they created. Let them miss the version of themselves that only existed when they were connected to your light. Because that's the truth they live with now. They didn't just lose a person. They lost alignment. And alignment doesn't come back by begging. It returns only through repentance. And not everyone is humble enough to kneel. So walk forward, radiant, whole, unapologetic. You didn't just survive the betrayal, you inherited the blessing they dropped, and that kind of favor, it never expires. Number 5, they didn't understand the assignment, so life handed them a lifetime of regret. Chosen one, do you know how many people pray for elevation, for change, for a breakthrough, but fail to recognize it when it shows up in human form? They didn't miss a person when they lost you. They missed a moment. They missed an assignment. They missed a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity that didn't come wrapped in applause, but in purpose. You weren't just another friend, partner, or connection. You were the lesson. You were the mirror. You were the bridge they were supposed to cross, not burn. And instead of embracing the discomfort of growth, they ran back to the familiarity of their dysfunction and called it freedom. He came to his own, and his own did not receive him. John 1:11. You see, some people are so focused on status that they can't recognize substance. They pray for direction, but when it arrives wearing humility, they dismiss it. You showed up in alignment with love that couldn't be bought, wisdom that couldn't be imitated, and truth they didn't want to face. And because it didn't flatter their ego, they treated it like a burden instead of a blessing. It's just like when Vincent van Gogh painted masterpieces no one appreciated while he was alive. They couldn't see the brilliance because it didn't match their expectations. Only after he was gone did the world realize they'd rejected genius. That's how people treat the chosen, valuable, but not in the packaging their ego respects. Have you ever noticed how people confuse genuine guidance for control? How they mistake your steady presence for something trying to limit them rather than lift them? You didn't try to dominate their journey. You tried to elevate it. You weren't there to fix them. You were there to awaken something they didn't know they needed. But awakening is uncomfortable, and comfort, unfortunately, is their idol. Faithful are the wounds of a friend, but the kisses of an enemy are deceitful. Proverbs 27:6. They thought the test was how much you could tolerate, how long you would wait, how quietly you would accept being ignored, belittled, or minimized. But that was never the test. The real test was theirs. Could they recognize the divine in something human? Could they appreciate a rare soul without trying to possess it? Could they grow beside you instead of competing with you? And the answer was no. Now they're stuck, not because you failed them, but because they failed to rise when called. And here's the part that stings the most for them. You didn't demand loyalty. You embodied it. You didn't beg for respect. You exuded it. And they weren't ready. Not because you were too much, but because they showed up with too little. My people are destroyed for lack of knowledge. Hosea 4:6. It's like the story of Nikola Tesla and Thomas Edison. Tesla brought revolutionary ideas, But because they didn't fit Edison's ego or agenda, they were dismissed. Tesla wasn't appreciated until long after. Just like you. You were the breakthrough that didn't make noise, and they preferred volume over value. So they walked away. Or worse, they stayed and betrayed you silently, not realizing they were dismantling their own deliverance. And now they're haunted, not by your success, but by what they could have been if they had honored your presence. They're not just mourning the loss of connection, they're mourning the version of themselves that only existed around your light. Why do some people only see clearly when it's too late? Isn't it ironic how they tried to rewrite history in their minds, but can't escape the truth etched in their spirit? Whoever receives a prophet in the name of a prophet will receive a prophet's reward. Matthew 10:41. You weren't in their life by chance. You were sent with insight, sent with healing, sent with a role in their transformation. But they misunderstood the assignment, and the universe closed the door. Because divine appointments have expiration dates, and when the test is missed, the season shifts. Do you remember Nina Simone? She was fierce, misunderstood, and ahead of her time. People rejected her because they couldn't handle her truth, but her truth never needed their approval. Eventually, the world caught up, but the regret of those who knew her personally and mistreated her remains in shadows. So now they scroll in silence. They compare their current situations to the peace you once brought. They chase shallow connections and try to recreate what they once dismissed. But nothing fits, nothing satisfies. Because you weren't a placeholder, you were the blueprint. And that blueprint has moved on. You've been elevated, not because you escaped the pain, but because you passed the test. You stayed rooted while others drifted. You stayed genuine when others performed. You carried out your assignment with honor, even when they tried to turn the classroom into a battlefield. And to every chosen one reading this, stop replaying their failure like it's your responsibility. You didn't confuse them. You challenged them. You didn't abandon them. You outgrew them. Because the test was never about keeping them. It was about revealing them. They didn't just fumble a bond. They fumbled the very becoming they were born for. And now they live in the ache of unrealized potential, haunted by the version of themselves they could have discovered. If only they had seen you for who you really were. But you're moving lighter now. Clarity has replaced confusion. Peace has replaced pain. You're not chasing closure, you are the closure. And when the universe sees you pass your test, the next level always opens. Without apology. Keep rising, because the lesson was never just for them. It was to show you what kind of light you carry, and what happens when someone tries to dim it and ends up blinded by their own shadows. Number 6, they sold the future for a feeling. Now they're left with ashes. Chosen one, how do you explain to someone that they didn't just lose a person, they lost a destiny? That in chasing a moment, they forfeited a movement? Some people don't realize that when they walk away from a divine connection, they're not walking toward freedom, they're walking straight into famine. Do you see it now? They didn't betray you in isolation. They betrayed everything tied to you. Your energy wasn't temporary. It carried legacy. It carried the healing of generations, the correction of ancestral mistakes, the wisdom of lifetimes. You weren't sent to entertain, you were sent to establish. But they sold their future for a feeling, and now they're left with smoke in their lungs and regret in their bones. The wise woman builds her house, but with her own hands the foolish one tears hers down. Proverbs 14:1. They couldn't see that your love wasn't transactional, it was transformational. And transformation is never easy. It demands presence, accountability, maturity. They weren't ready for that, so they reached for something easier, faster, shinier. something that didn't require them to evolve. Much like Esau, who in a moment of weakness sold his birthright to Jacob for a bowl of stew, they exchanged something eternal for something fleeting. Esau's hunger lasted a day, his loss echoed forever. And just like that, the ones who fumbled you didn't just lose comfort, they lost their covenant. You were the blueprint, the peace bringer, the steady voice in their chaos. You were the foundation beneath their future, and they mistook you for a phase. But let's be honest, how many people crave peace but run from the person who brings it? How many say they want purpose but can't sit still long enough to hear its voice? Do not throw away your confidence. It will be richly rewarded. Hebrews 10:35. They thought choosing lust, ego, and attention meant they were choosing themselves. But how can you choose yourself while abandoning the person who was sent to heal your identity? They mistook temporary validation for eternal value. And now they wander, touching hands that don't feel like home, lying next to bodies that feel more like distance than warmth. Look at the life of Whitney Houston, loved by millions but surrounded by people who enabled distraction over discipline. She was a voice of a generation, a soul born for greatness, yet many around her sold her future for a feeling, chasing highs instead of helping her hold her legacy. You too are surrounded by people who couldn't carry the weight of what you brought. They say they wanted depth, but when depth showed up wearing your face, steady, honest, sacred, they ran. Why? Because legacy requires you to grow. Are they willing to lose themselves to become who they were destined to be? Most aren't. So instead of rising, they retreat. Instead of receiving, they reject. And now, they sit in silence, haunted by what they had and what they'll never get back. The blessing of the Lord brings wealth, without painful toil for it. Proverbs 10:22. They didn't just fumble love, they fumbled lineage. You were the one that would have broken curses. You were the one who would have raised children differently, healed trauma, brought purpose into homes built on pain. But they were too drawn to chaos, too addicted to their own noise, to hear the whisper of eternity in your presence. Think about Harriet Tubman. She didn't just free people, she disrupted generations of bondage. But imagine if the people she tried to lead had rejected her guidance out of fear or impatience. They would have missed their deliverance because it didn't come how they expected. Many of the people in your life did exactly that. They rejected your leadership because it required trust, and trust felt too risky. And now the cost has come due, slowly, subtly, completely. What they traded for pleasure has soured. What looked like a thrill now feels like a trap. Their path? Fragmented. Their soul? Restless. Their peace? Missing. And their memories? Flooded with moments when they could have chosen you, and didn't. For what shall it profit a man if he shall gain the whole world and lose his own soul? Mark 8:36. Chosen one, don't you dare reduce your value because someone else lacked vision. You weren't asking for too much. You were offering everything. You weren't hard to love. You were hard to replace. And now life is showing them just how true that is. Let them keep chasing. Let them keep scrolling through shallow conversations and empty rooms. Let them replay the last time they felt alive, because it was with you. That feeling? It wasn't chemistry. It was calling. It was divine design. It was legacy tapping them on the shoulder and asking, will you rise or will you retreat? They retreated. So let them sit in the ashes. Let them try to make fire out of smoke. Let them hold hands with people who don't speak the language of their soul. Because once a chosen one walks away, the portal closes. You weren't just the fire. You were the foundation. And there's no rebuilding when the blueprint is gone. You're not here to look back. You're here to build forward. You're not here to prove your worth to those who sold you for a thrill. You're here to prove what the universe always knew, that you are the root, that you are the reset, that your presence is sacred, strategic, and stamped by heaven. So keep rising, Keep choosing depth in a world obsessed with surface. Keep investing in what echoes, not what flatters, because legacy doesn't scream to be noticed. It quietly changes everything. They chose the wind, and now they're scattered. But you are planted. You are rising. You are eternal. Number 7, you reflected their truth, so they smashed the mirror. Chosen one, have you ever felt like your very existence made people uncomfortable, even when you did nothing wrong? Isn't it strange how some individuals react to authenticity, not with appreciation, but with aggression? That's not because of who you are, it's because of what you reveal. You weren't the problem, you were the mirror. And mirrors don't lie, they simply reflect what's already there. You see, when your presence carries truth, it exposes everything people try to hide. They weren't offended by your words, they were pierced by your energy. Your calm made their chaos obvious. Your integrity made their manipulation impossible to ignore. You didn't shame them, you didn't mock them, but just by being you, you made them face the parts of themselves they spent years avoiding. Have I then become your enemy by telling you the truth? Galatians 4:16. The truth? They never hated you. They hated the version of themselves they saw when you walked in the room. You weren't showing off. You were showing up, raw, grounded, sincere, no performance, no pretenses. And that threatened people who were still auditioning for acceptance. Think about Malcolm X. He didn't sugarcoat his words or dim his fire. He spoke what many were too afraid to hear and too proud to admit. That's what truth-tellers do. They expose systems, shatter illusions, and call out masks. And, in return, they are often painted as villains by those who refuse to evolve. So they called you too intense, too emotional, too real. But what they really meant was, you make me feel exposed, and exposure is uncomfortable when you've lived your whole life pretending. For nothing is hidden that will not be made manifest, nor is anything secret that will not be known and come to light. Luke 8:17. They didn't want transformation. They wanted reinforcement, someone to validate their limitations. But you weren't sent to reinforce. You were sent to reveal. Your role wasn't to applaud their stagnation. Your presence was meant to stir their awakening. And when truth stirs, it shakes everything false. Just like Frida Kahlo, whose bold, raw art reflected pain, identity, and truth in ways people weren't ready to accept. She was judged, misunderstood, and even attacked, not for doing harm, but for showing what was real. You are that same kind of mirror. Your gift isn't loud, it's honest. And not everyone wants honesty. So instead of facing themselves, they turned on you. Instead of embracing their healing, they destroyed the reflection. Why do so many people sabotage the one person who finally makes them feel seen? The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it. John 1:5. They weren't ready for the light, so they blamed the mirror. And now they perform for people who never knew the real them, living shallow lives with shallow validation, haunted by the reflection you showed them, the one they chose to ignore. Look at Robin Williams. He was joy embodied, yet behind that joy was depth, struggle, and brilliance. And so many people couldn't see past the surface. They wanted laughter, but they couldn't handle his truth. And many of the people around him masked their own darkness with humor. Your presence does the same. It peels back the layers. And not everyone is brave enough to stay when the mask slips. And you moved on, not because you didn't care, but because you understood something powerful. You don't dim the truth to make people comfortable with their own denial. You didn't come to be worshipped. You came to awaken, and they weren't ready. And you will know the truth, and the truth will set you free. John 8:32. Now they try to forget you. They pretend they've evolved. They build fragile circles that can't handle depth. But every fake friendship, every hollow smile, every moment of silence, it all reminds them of what they had in you. The mirror, the clarity, the rare presence that didn't ask for masks, but invited truth. Think of Prince Diana, a woman whose quiet grace and deep integrity shook the image of royalty. The palace preferred compliance. She embodied authenticity, and because of that, she became a mirror, not just for individuals, but for an entire system. Mirrors are not welcome in halls of illusion. Neither were you. So let them tell their version. Let them build their narrative. Let them pretend they walked away stronger, while their spirit still remembers the reflection, because people forget conversations, but they never forget how your presence made them feel seen, even if they weren't ready to handle it. You don't need to fix what they broke. You don't need to chase down your reputation in rooms you were never meant to stay in. Your role was never to soothe their illusions. Your role was to hold up the mirror and walk away if they smashed it. Whoever corrects a scoffer gets himself abuse. Do not reprove a scoffer, or he will hate you. Reprove a wise man, and he will love you. Proverbs 9:7-8. They stayed blind, not because truth wasn't available, but because truth wasn't easy. But truth doesn't chase. It doesn't apologize. It stands. So now they keep searching for that feeling, the one they felt in your presence, the clarity, the conviction, the peace beneath your words. They reach for it in shallow friendships, in crowded rooms, in empty achievements, but it never lands, because your presence wasn't imitation, it was revelation. You were never there to judge them. You were there to reflect the version of themselves that they could have become, if only they had chosen healing over hiding. So rise now, chosen one, not as the villain they wrote into their story, but as the truth they were too afraid to embrace. Because while they're still running from the mirror, you became the light. Number 8. You were the blueprint, and now they're stuck with cheap copies that keep falling apart. Chosen one, have you ever noticed how people chase the end result but reject the very process required to get there? Isn't it wild how someone can walk away from the original masterpiece and then spend the rest of their life chasing knockoffs, and still wonder why nothing ever feels right again? Let's tell the truth without filters. You were the blueprint, the foundation, the raw design that held vision, strength, depth, and divine alignment. And they threw it away, not because it was broken, but because it required building. Because real construction takes commitment. And commitment, as you know, reveals who's serious about legacy and who just wants the look of loyalty. By wisdom, a house is built, and through understanding it is established. Through knowledge, its rooms are filled with rare and beautiful treasures. Proverbs 24:3-4. You didn't just show up, you showed them what could be. Your presence offered more than companionship, it offered blueprint energy. You taught by example, you loved with vision, you poured out from overflow. But they couldn't see the architecture, they only saw the dust. They saw you in progress and called it a mess, never realizing that the empire was already being framed. They didn't have the eyes for greatness, so they ran toward what was fast and flashy, toward replicas, toward comfort, and now they're living in spiritual shacks with no foundation, wondering why everything keeps collapsing. It's just like what happened to Thomas Edison and Nikola Tesla. Edison had power, but Tesla had vision. Tesla was the blueprint for future electricity, but was dismissed by many because his ideas were too advanced, too layered. People chased the name with fame, while the true originator was overlooked. Sound familiar? You weren't just there to love, you were there to level. They didn't rise on their own, they rose under your presence. Your love didn't just comfort, it cultivated. Your wisdom didn't just advise, it activated. But because You didn't require performance. They mistook your peace for passivity. And they missed it completely. Unless the Lord builds the house, those who build it labor in vain. Psalm 127:1. Now they try to copy your essence, quoting your words like they made them up, mimicking your movements but missing the magic. But you cannot duplicate what was born from divine instruction. You can borrow language, but you cannot borrow legacy. You were the blueprint, and once someone fumbles the original, the copies start to crumble. Look at Beyoncé. How many artists have tried to copy her style, her work ethic, her essence, only to fall short? Because what she carries isn't just skill, it's blueprint energy. It's years of sacrifice, vision, and spiritual alignment that you cannot imitate. And like her, you weren't just operating in talent, you were operating in purpose. So now they're stuck, not just with counterfeit connections, but with the echo of your impact. And they know it. Every shallow bond they form feels hollow. Every mimicry falls short. Every attempt to recreate the connection fails. Because you were the mold. And once the mold is broken, nothing fits right again. For we are God's handiwork, created in Christ Jesus to do good works. Ephesians 2:10. Chosen one, understand this. It wasn't your responsibility to convince them. You weren't sent to beg to be recognized. You were sent to design what couldn't be seen until it was built. They mistook blueprints for burden. They thought if it wasn't finished, it wasn't valuable. But anything divine requires time, and they weren't patient enough to build beside you. Take Walt Disney, fired from a newspaper for lacking imagination, laughed at for pursuing theme parks. Yet he was building legacy when others were stuck chasing applause. He was the architect of wonder, and now the world stands on his vision. You too carry the type of soul that makes others dream, makes them build, makes them see. And the tragedy? They walked away before it was finished. Do not despise these small beginnings, for the Lord rejoices to see the work begin. Zechariah 4:10. Now you've moved on, still glowing, still constructing something real, and while you rise they scroll, searching for a familiar energy in people who look like you, talk like you, maybe even post like you, but don't feel like you. And that's the real loss. Because your presence wasn't an act, it was activation. They're stuck living in a blueprintless world, patching together borrowed wisdom, recycled aesthetics, and soulless connection. But no matter how they frame it, you were the origin point, the real, the rare, the once-in-a-lifetime alignment they'll never recreate, because essence can't be cloned. So chosen one, don't you dare question your worth because they walked away. You weren't abandoned, you were exalted. The real is always rejected before it's revered. You were misunderstood not because you were wrong, but because you were ahead. Let them decorate their shallow structures with knockoff truth and pretend peace. Let them drown in performance while you keep laying brick with purpose. The difference is their house may get attention, but yours is going to outlast empires. Because while they play with copies, you became the cornerstone. Number 9, they bet against you. Now they're paying the price. Chosen one, have you ever wondered why some people seem so confident in your downfall, as if they gained something from your struggle? Isn't it strange how they smile when you stumble, not realizing that the fall was part of your flight? They bet against you because they never understood what you carry. They thought your strength came from their support, not knowing your source was sacred. They didn't just walk away. They wagered against you. And now they're losing more than pride. They're losing position, proximity, privilege. Because when you bet against someone chosen by God, you don't just lose the bet. You lose access to the entire blessing attached to them. No weapon formed against you shall prosper, and every tongue that rises against you in judgment you shall condemn. Isaiah 54:17. They thought turning their back on you was power, that ghosting you, blocking you, rejecting you would break something in your soul. But what actually happened? You multiplied. Every time they tried to bury you, you didn't just survive. You bloomed. And not just in silence, in divine strategy. It's the same way Michael Jordan was once told he wasn't good enough to make the varsity basketball team in high school. He wasn't bitter, he built. He used every doubt as fuel. Now, the very people who doubted him hang his jersey on their walls. That's what happens when people miscalculate your value. Their doubt becomes your documentation. You weren't the gamble, you were the jackpot. And now they're sitting with empty hands, watching you rise through doors they no longer have keys to. They thought walking away would diminish you, but the only thing it did was clear your path. Isn't it funny how subtraction becomes expansion when you're walking with favor? But many who are first will be last, and many who are last will be first. Matthew 19:30. While they were seeking clout, you were building character. While they mocked your patience, you were mastering your craft. And now, you're not just walking into blessings, you're becoming one. Your progress wasn't loud, it was lethal. It wasn't boastful, it was unstoppable. Think about Oprah Winfrey, fired from her first TV job, laughed at, underestimated, but her quiet consistency turned rejection into a media empire. The very people who thought she'd fade away now study her strategy. That's what happens when someone bets against a destiny that wasn't theirs to understand. They didn't just bet wrong, they bet against the divine. And the universe doesn't bless betrayal. It doesn't reward small minds for underestimating massive purpose. You weren't out here performing, you were preparing, you weren't trying to fit in, you were chosen to stand out. For the Lord will vindicate his people and have compassion on his servants. Psalm 135:14. Now they sit in the audience while your life becomes the stage they're no longer invited to. Every door they thought they'd dominate, closed. Every platform they assumed they'd control, gone. And the spotlight, it found you, not because you chased it, but because you became aligned with it. Look at Elon Musk. Counted out by critics, dismissed by investors, even ousted from companies he helped build, but he never stopped building. Now those who doubted him have no choice but to acknowledge the infrastructure he laid down. That's what legacy does. It silences noise with structure. Let's be real. They didn't just lose a person, they lost the power you brought, the insight, the glow, the gravity of your presence. Being near you wasn't luck, it was access. And now that access is revoked. The stone the builders rejected has become the cornerstone. Psalm 118 verse 22. So let them sit in the silence of their own choices. Let them scroll past your progress with half-likes and hidden regret. Let them pretend they're unbothered while privately mourning what they fumbled. Because the truth is, the rise wasn't revenge, it was revelation. You didn't win in spite of them. You won because heaven already declared it, and they were never part of the plan long term. You see it now, don't you? They weren't equipped to walk with you because they still needed to see you fall to feel tall. But you weren't built to stay down. You recalibrated, you refined, you rose. And now they have to live with that. Every room they thought was theirs now echoes with your name. Every opportunity they tried to block now opens only for you. And while they were busy measuring your steps, you were learning how to fly. So, chosen one, don't look back. Don't dim your light out of sympathy. They made their bet, and they lost. And you? You didn't just beat the odds. You became the one they can no longer reach. Because power doesn't beg to be seen. It becomes the proof. Number 10. Their betrayal built the beast, and now they regret waking it up. Chosen one, have you ever noticed how the very people who tried to break you were the ones who ended up building the version of you they now fear? Isn't it ironic how betrayal never ends the chosen? It awakens them. They thought they were crushing you. Instead, they cracked open the very force that was sleeping inside. Let's be clear, they didn't destroy you, they defined you. That moment of betrayal, the silence, the abandonment, the lie, it didn't weaken you, it activated you, because chosen ones don't fall and stay down. We rise, not as we were, but stronger, wiser, and more focused than ever before. You intended to harm me, but God intended it for good to accomplish what is now being done. Genesis 50:20. They thought the knife would end you, but you used it to cut ties, carve new boundaries, and sever everything that once held you back. They didn't break the spirit in you. They broke the illusion that you needed their approval, their loyalty, their presence to thrive. And from that fracture, you rebuilt, not in spite of the pain, but because of it. Like Nelson Mandela, who was betrayed by his nation and locked away for 27 years. They thought isolation would silence him. Instead, it refined him. And when he walked out of that prison, he became the very leader they never expected to see again. Stronger, wiser, and more powerful than before. That's the energy you now carry, the kind that cannot be unmade. Though I walk in the midst of trouble, you preserve my life. You stretch out your hand against the anger of my foes. Psalm 138:7. They didn't witness your collapse, they triggered your evolution. The pain became fuel, the rejection became redirection. You didn't just survive, you transformed. You speak differently now. You walk with purpose. You breathe with peace. Because what they tried to bury turned into your rebirth. Can you feel it? The way your discernment has sharpened, the way your vision has cleared. Betrayal has a way of introducing you to parts of yourself you didn't know existed. They expected you to fold, but you forged something new. And now every time they watch you, they're witnessing the beast they unintentionally built. But he knows the way that I take. When he has tested me, I will come forth as gold. Job 23:10. They see it in your glow, in your peace, in the way you rise without asking for permission. While they're still nursing wounds of envy and confusion, you're out here constructing empires in silence. The very heart they tried to break is now building what they'll never touch again. Look at Lady Gaga, publicly shamed, dismissed, even betrayed by industry insiders who thought she was too strange, too bold, too much. But she took every insult and turned it into innovation. She reinvented herself, elevated her sound, and became an icon. Not despite the criticism, because of it. Just like you. Your power didn't come from praise. It was born in the pain. And now they regret it. Not because they loved you deeply, but because they realize they'll never have access to this version of you again. The version that gives without question, shows up without expectation, believes in people without needing proof. That version is gone. Not bitter, but reborn. The righteous cry out, and the Lord hears them. He delivers them from all their troubles. Psalm 34:17. And you? You're no longer the one begging for closure. You are the closure. You don't need an apology to heal. You don't need a seat at their table when you're building your own palace. Let them watch from the shadows. Let them scroll through your victories with silent awe and hidden ache. Because while they plotted against you, you were preparing. While they mocked your journey, you were becoming undeniable. They didn't just lose someone to talk to, they lost the only one who saw their potential before they even believed in it themselves. And that kind of regret, it doesn't fade. It lingers, it haunts, just like LeBron James, betrayed by fans, doubted by analysts, and hated for his moves. He turned criticism into crowns. Every betrayal became a blueprint, and now even his biggest critics admit they bet wrong. So thank them, not for the love, but for the betrayal, because it built the beast. And this beast doesn't seek revenge. It speaks in results. You don't show up to prove anything anymore. You are the proof. You don't need validation. You are the validation. The Lord is my strength and my shield. My heart trusts in him, and he helps me. Psalm 28:7. Chosen one, your growth is not revenge, it's revelation. It's heaven's way of saying, you passed the test they failed. You didn't crumble, you ascended, and now they can only watch. From behind locked doors, from disconnected timelines, from regret-stained memories. Let them sit with the silence that came after you walked away. Let them feel the weight of what they tried to break, but only awakened. Because this version of you, this warrior, this builder, this flame, they'll never access it again. Beloved, if you're still here, it means this message wasn't just words, it was confirmation. Everything they did to break you only made your foundation stronger. Their betrayal didn't bury you, it birthed you. You didn't just survive what was meant to destroy you, you evolved because of it. And now you rise, not in spite of what happened, but because of it. Let them regret, let them watch, let them sit in the shadows of the choices they made. You're not looking back, you're not slowing down, you're not folding for anyone who couldn't recognize the divine blueprint standing in front of them. You're rising forward with purpose, with peace, and with power. If this message stirred something deep in your soul, don't keep it to yourself. Share it with another chosen one who might be forgetting their worth. You never know who needs the reminder that they were never the problem. They were always the proof. And to all of you who've stayed through this journey, thank you for being here, for listening, for walking this road of awakening with open eyes and an open heart. Your presence matters deeply. To those of you who've given through super thanks, thank you. Truly, your support helps us continue to speak life into places the world often forgets. And if you can't donate, know this: we are just as grateful for you. Your energy, your attention, your healing, that's priceless. May the path ahead be clear. May your strength never waver, and may every scar become a signal of just how far you've come. May favor chase you, peace surround you, and power flow through you, because you were never average. You were anointed, you were appointed, and you were chosen for such a time as this. Keep rising, you're just getting started.